What's going on, everybody? Ian Hartitz here from Fantasy Life. It is certainly a great day to be great, and it was a great day to record the following clip with Fantasy Life community lead Sam Wallace. Sam and I were getting after it in the Fantasy Life community Discord server, which you can find a link to right below in that description. And we invite you to join because we have a whole community of people that love fantasy football and just betting on things in general. Truly is a great American pastime. So Sam and I knocked out this episode on quarterbacks. We're also recording this Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern talking running backs, as well as next Monday going over the classes, wide receivers, and tight ends. So definitely a dynasty lean here. But yeah, if you want to join the live recordings, you can get in there and ask any questions that happen to be on your mind. So anyway, thank you guys again for tuning in and hope you enjoy Sam and I's discussion.
Well, welcome in, everybody. This is a first. This is exciting. I've only done a live show with the great, the GOAT, the King, Ian Hartitz. One other time, it was last summer, we did an underdog draft together, and I think, honestly, that was the one that I finished up the best with. I reached way hard on Dak Prescott to force a stack with Lamb, but it ended up working out for me. But no, thanks for taking some time. We're doing a pre-draft Dynasty series over the next about week and a half here prior to the NFL draft kicking off, next week, Thursday already? So we're talking quarterbacks tonight. Ian, what's going on?
All things QB, great to be with you, Sam. Yeah, man, we are getting more of these going, so no need to say we got to get together more often. We are getting together. This one's going to be obviously today on Monday, but also Thursday and then the following Monday as well. Yeah, getting through it. So as much as, in the past, I've almost been happy to take a back seat with things during draft season. Like, it really is so helpful to we don't need to all be Dane Bruglers here, like, and know every single. I love Dane Brugler, and the fact that he can name the high school mistakes going on, stuff like that's incredible. Maybe don't need to go that deep, but Sam, like, once we start seeing these guys in the preseason in August, it helps me to put a name to the guy we're drafting. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, so I got to ask you right off the bat, because there's actually a number of good quarterbacks in this class, or at least the ones that we project to get first-round draft capital, and we know how valuable that is. Are we looking at a repeat of the 2021 class? Because I'm seeing some unfortunate comparisons. So what are your thoughts just overall, I guess, before we really dive into some of these prospects specifically?
Yeah, I think we have legit, and I'm pulling up 2021 class just to look at some of the ballers we had. T-Law, Zach Wilson up at the top. Let's see, Trey Lance third, Justin Fields, Mac Jones. So 5 QBs in the top 15. We could get there, man. It really could be that. I think we have 4 guaranteed at this point. We actually just had Cirque, I believe, was the one that released some of the draft props, and it was pretty useful because it did more than just a bigger name. So obviously, Caleb 101, we all get that. It does seem like Jaden Daniels is going to be the guy at 102, and I got a chance to talk to Hayden Winks last week. Really good, podcast there on quarterbacks as well. And I asked Hayden, I was like, "Do you think this is just smokescreen? Like last year, for crying out loud, we thought Will Levis was going to go number 2 until the day of the freaking draft." So I wasn't sure because myself, Hayden, Nate Tice, like a lot of really smart minds out there, those guys, not so much me, but a lot of people seem to think that Drake Maye is better. Okay. I'm just Drake and joshing around here, but I do think Drake Maye is better than Jaden Daniels. So I was just like, are we just purely going off of speculation here? But Hayden was explaining how, like, Schefter really has, said just based on sources around the league, while he has not had Washington straight up tell him, like, we are taking Jaden Daniels, it does seem like more and more, and the draft odds are reflecting it, more and more steam to the idea that it will be Daniels at 2. Seemingly, Drake Maye, number 3, number 4 after that. We got the J.J. McCarthy hype. I think the question, Sam, and this is one of the things I'm actually breaking down in my long-form YouTube video of the week tomorrow, but, like, what are the Raiders going to do? And then what are the Broncos going to do with their quarterbacks? Because I will not stand in a world, man, if we have Jarrett Stidham and Gardner Minshew moving forward as the expected 2024 starters. So Bo Nix to Denver, Michael Penix to the Raiders has kind of been the 2 common landing spots there. The question is that going to happen at pick 12 and pick 23 or wherever they have right now? Or could those be round 2 guys?
No, I'm with you. And quick shout out to Sam Holt. She and I do a Wednesday night Dynasty show that has been really, really fun to talk through over the last couple of weeks. And we've talked a lot about, the big name quarterbacks, not that we can, over talk about them, but we're like, look, Caleb Williams, just pencil him in, Sharpie him into 101. He's going to Chicago. We already know what weapons he's going to have. And it does feel pretty set. Like, you said, Drake Maye, Jaden Daniels going in the top 3 as well. But the ascent of J.J. McCarthy, and I just love looking back at our own Matthew Friedman's mock drafts that he's done. Immediately post Super Bowl, his mock draft volume 1.0, he had McCarthy outside his top 32 as like a fringe, kind of a footnote at the bottom of, hey, this guy could get first round pick, we'll see. He's now vaulted into like the top, 5. He's the trade that Minnesota is maybe going to make, to shelve out their first 2 picks to the Chargers to go up and get their guy. I'm more excited about like the McCarthy, the Penix, and the Knicks because, as you mentioned, their range of outcomes is so wide. We all thought Will Levis was going to go early and he fell. I mean, just watching that on draft night is always tough when they keep panning to the guy who just keeps falling and falling. Like, it's tough. So I feel for the
Rodgers was the OG with that. Remember? He was like pick 25.
I feel for the man. Like, and I get it. It's tough. So not that I don't care about these other top 3 guys, but, Denver feels like a good spot. I've even seen, I think ESPN put out an article today that broke down like the top 100 picks, and they had Penix going at the top of, I think it was the top of the second round to go back up Matthew Stafford. So I thought that one was interesting too, to see where some of these other guys will go if they don't get that first round draft capital. Do they land in quality situations because like 50 some odd quarterbacks got to start last year and teams are now recognizing, hey, if we had a Jake Browning when our quarterback went down, we might not have had such a bad end of the season.
Mentioned before, it's actually Circa Sports, and those 2 lines on Knicks and Penix are, what you're talking about, like kind of right around that round 1 border as opposed to like top 15. So sure. I'm not saying they're perfect. We've seen some of these draft props, really go up and about, but usually they're only releasing like a couple names. So shout out again to Circa for giving us like freaking 40 names on here. But yeah, I believe both of them end up having 32.5. Yeah, Bo Nix 32.5, minus 120, minus 110 juice either way. So not even much of a lean. And Penix is also right there with them. A little bit more of a lean on the under for Penix. Again, potentially seeing him get that Raiders love there. But back up to, Stafford is interesting. I know they drafted Stetson Bennett last year, like round 4, but he's had some weird off the field problems that they haven't, publicized a ton. So
he's an old man too. But I mean, I guess
I was about to say, regardless, maybe not the most high upside backup. So
you go from McCarthy, who is, a legit babyface kid, to like Penix and Knicks had like 6 years in the league. They've started like north of 50 games, I feel like, in their career.
But that's what's funny. I feel like people, the way they treat McCarthy sometimes is almost Stetson Bennett-esque, where it's like, oh, here's a guy who's just along for the ride as his team, won the national championship. Like, we need to step back a little bit. And as much as Penix and Knicks, like, yeah, if you guys watched some of those Washington-Oregon games last year, or just any of those shootouts that both guys were participating in, like, they were awesome. They're also in their 6th year of college football. So, like
they
what
should
would we have
be
thought?
Good, right?
Exactly. And the fact that McCarthy, McCarthy and Drake Maye and Caleb Williams, like, they've been playing college football for 3 years. If you cut off Bo Nix off after 3 years, those are the Auburn years. Like, we're talking about someone that a lot of people probably wouldn't even think should be drafted. Jaden Daniels, I think, threw 10 touchdowns and 10 picks in his last year at Arizona State. Oof. Different factors went into it. He's obviously gotten better, but like that's where it comes. And Michael Penix, like, yeah, he did some actually better things, I think, in Indiana than what Knicks and Daniels were able to do at their first stops. But that's where it comes with McCarthy. This is projection, and it's projection on a guy who was a 5-star recruit, who finished his high school career at IMG Academy, and who seemingly, again, does have better football to be played. So this dude, when they won the national championship, still couldn't even legally drink yet, Sam. Like, it wouldn't be the most surprising thing to me if the guy that has lost, freaking 2 games as a starter in his high school and college career combined, maybe continues on winning at the NFL level. So not trying to say wins and losses are a complete quarterback stat, but I push back at the idea that, like, no one can fathom J.J. McCarthy being this, high draft pick.
Yeah, and on that note, it is always a fun, I mean, I guess that's why we have the discussion, right? That's why we're sitting here talking about it, and why McCarthy has rocketed up the draft boards over the last couple of months. But as someone who really does dive deep into these prospects and writes a lot of our awesome, just phenomenal Dynasty rookie profiles, I love reading those. And quick shout out to all of you guys who do those profile pieces, because those are solid pieces that I refer back to in my own content over the course of the season. So because I do a lot of our Dynasty content in season, I'm constantly going back to like the gold mine you guys put together. So thank you again for that. But I was thinking, with McCarthy, as you're evaluating a guy whose sample size isn't really that big, who clearly benefited, right, like objectively from a phenomenal run game and a phenomenal defense. It's not a knock on McCarthy that his run game was great or that his defense was great. He just played really well within his system. How do you balance that of, like, is there untapped upside? Is there untapped potential? or is he simply just a product of a great run game and a great defense? How do you balance that out when you're doing your evals of these guys?
You start looking a little bit more at the NFL translatable sorts of pieces to try to see actually how small of a sample size it really is that we're talking about. And that's another great, piece of research that Hayden Winks was able to do, where when you actually look at the total like number of intermediate crossers and digs, like those NFL throws right down the middle over the linebackers' heads in front of the safeties. All of a sudden, McCarthy has as many throws as any quarterback, from this entire class. Looking at, again, those more NFL-specific throws. Kind of makes sense. He's been in, yes, a run-heavy system, but also a pro-style offense led by Jim Harbaugh, obviously. So that factor is going for him. And also, man, it's just the excellence on third and long specifically. And it can be a little bit fluky year over year. I remember that was Carson Wentz's calling card. And back when he was amazing, like 2017, unironically probably would have won MVP if he didn't get injured.
Say that was his MVP
year,
year, right? Yeah.
Yeah, again, like not trying to take anything away from Carson, just a matter. It's when we have these tougher situations, 3rd and 8 year over year is just not the stickiest stat in the world. But those situations, okay, a lot of Michigan drives were run, pass sort of thing. So McCarthy wasn't exactly being put in the best spots. He wasn't getting these 1st and 10 bombs to Malik Neighbors out there, each and every drive. So he was by far and away, man, the most efficient quarterback on 3rd downs. And when you start seeing the ways he was converting, he's fearless throwing over the middle of the field. He's not afraid of tight windows. He's got enough mobility to get outside the pocket and go ahead and pick up a 1st down with his legs. I mean, his 3-cone time, I think it was like a 6.9 set. Like it was absolutely blazing out there. So he can move, very agile dude. And doesn't have an absolute howitzer for an arm, but still, man, strong enough. And that's another one of those things where, okay, if the arm strength is your biggest concern, I do think a guy that, again, turned 21 in January can probably fill out a little bit more there. So, again, I think it's the intangibles, man, which, yeah, sometimes tougher to quantify, especially when you look at the leadership. And did you see the quote from the beast, Dane Brugler, about McCarthy?
I don't think so. What was it?
He's apparently, when he was visiting Michigan, he just straight up told the other recruits, he's like, do not come here if you're trying to chase girls or, party or do any of this stuff. Like, that was literally the quote. He's like, we are here to restore Michigan football, not dealing with this other crap. So some of that matters, man.
You know what?
Some of that matters.
The spreadsheet bros want to be able to quantify everything, and I get it, right? But sometimes you just can't. So what I'm hearing you say is, it's a lot of those transferable NFL skills, being aggressive, 3rd down, throws over the middle. And that's great. I mean, again, as someone who admittedly doesn't do a ton of prospect diving like you do to that level, those things are super great to hear, because when someone says, oh yeah, these skills translate really well, I'm like, tell me the skills. I need to know. So when I'm looking at these guys and drafting them, I need to know. So quick question came in here from somebody in the chat. Appreciate it. Long story short, Ian, what are you doing at 104, assuming you're going to take either Maye or McCarthy in a Superflex rookie draft? Maye or McCarthy? Does landing spot matter? Let's say, Maye goes to New England. Let's say McCarthy goes to Minnesota. So
no, I'm going Maye. I think Maye's in a different tier than McCarthy, to be honest with you. And also, in terms of being just the fantasy-friendly nature of things, because that's, if you want to talk about Maye versus Jaden Daniels, I think Maye is going to be the better NFL quarterback. But sure, I can see why people want to go with Jaden Daniels, and I probably would even suggest that myself. But with these two, man, like, it actually isn't even – I mentioned McCarthy can run, and he did show it off a little bit. Clutch 1st down scramble, 4th quarter of the national championship. Got some against my Buckeyes, sadly, especially in that 2022 game. But
that's right,
one of the things I looked at was fantasy points per game from purely rushing production over these last 2 seasons. I knew Daniels would be number 1, and he is at 13.8. But it surprised me. Drake Maye averaged more fantasy points per game from rushing than Caleb Williams, than Bo Nix, than McCarthy, than anyone else out there. So when you hear about Maye, you'll get these Justin Herbert comps, which very live arm, they kind of look similar and stuff as well. But
that always helps.
Ones, yeah, exactly. But there is, like, my comp was more like Justin Herbert if he like shotgunned a 2-liter of Mountain Dew before every game. Because this dude, that's where the Josh Allen stuff comes from. Like, we saw Drake Maye complete a left-handed touchdown pass. He does a read option, keeps it, decides to pitch it to his teammate anyway. It works out. There's an ill-advised hurdle on tape. Like, there is a wild child to Drake Maye's game, and I think that's going to cause some headaches for his, future NFL team. Because remember, before Josh Allen became a world beater in 2020, not like the Bills were, exactly killing it in 18 and 19. That said, fantasy managers, we're still killing it in 18-19. And that's why I think we'd have with Drake Maye. McCarthy's going to be more conservative, going to make more of the correct decisions that don't make offensive coordinators tear their hair out. That said, Maye's going to be the one where, yeah, maybe taking some extra sacks, maybe throwing some extra picks, but fantasy, not exactly penalizing those, mistakes as much as it should. And accordingly, give me Maye.
So does landing spot? So you would have Maye in a tier above McCarthy pretty handily, regardless of landing spot. Would there be a landing spot difference that would bump McCarthy, or no?
Like,
because New England doesn't feel great. Like KJ Osborne,
that's the one,
right? Like, who else is there? Kendrick Bourne.
If we get McCarthy to the Vikings and Maye to the Patriots, just for 2024, it's going to become closer. Sure. But then again, if he does, because the Minnesota landing spot for McCarthy does seem like we're getting most of the smoke here. And I will say, man, I don't think it's a complete given that McCarthy would step in ahead of Darnold. Now, we usually see, like, I think the only top 10 drafted quarterback to not start a single game as a rookie was a Jake Locker throwback since 2010. Like, most of these guys sooner rather than later get out there. Mahomes was like drafted 11th or 12th. Some guys like Trey Lance get a starter too because of injury. So getting the full redshirt year is pretty rare to see out of these guys. And, knowing Sam Darnold, I think it's one of these things where he's going to have one bad game in week 3 and all of a sudden everyone's going to be calling for McCarthy there. But again, I just think the manner in which Maye is going to play, his heightened scramble rate and things like that, it's going to make him more fantasy friendly. But happy you brought up that sad sack of excuse of a New England wide receiver room. They need to add multiple bullets with these other guys. I don't know if they got so scarred from their 2021 spending spree that they declined to do much else here. But yeah, how is KJ Osborne right now? The big crown jewel that they've managed to bring in. They re-signed Hunter Henry. Okay, would have been a lot cooler if it was still 2019 there. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, no kidding. So I think, just as someone who plays a ton of fantasy, I think that's super helpful to hear, though, where, I do get enamored with the Minnesota landing spot, kind of a projection of where McCarthy's going to go, and I talk myself into that and think, okay, he's going to have, Justin Jefferson, he's going to have Jordan Addison, he's going to have, Hawkinson whenever he's healthy enough to return. Those are phenomenal weapons, and I think with a good offensive system, a good coach, a division that, doesn't scare you. It's a good division in the NFC North, but he gets to play in a dome. So all of these things just make me excited. And then I look at Maye getting mocked to New England, and I have to look away. I just can't look at it and imagine pressing draft, even though I know Maye is head and above, the better prospect. But I think that's helpful to hear, right? That even though their landing spots are on paper polar opposites of each other, one being pretty good and one just being gross, you would still probably lean Maye there for Dynasty, and that's good. I think fantasy managers need to think just a bit beyond the now. You never want to think like 10 years down the road, right? But don't chase the sweet spot now just because a prospect, might be a little bit better or worse.
That is funny when you'll be in some of these startups, especially, and it's just like people are allergic to the idea that you're legally allowed to win your dynasty like the first year you're in it. Like it's allowed. It can happen, Sam. So
if you don't want to, it's fine. But
dude, I did a startup. I was telling you and Sam's about, because I got on here to get you guys advice on one of my picks, and I was looking at some of the teams going on, and like legit teams without like more than like a second year player on there. So yes, I drafting rookies, and some of these guys, especially like McCarthy. I'm doing an underdog draft right now, guys. Like, you'll still see McCarthy going like round 17, round 18. Like, if you can just get a starting quarterback that late in the draft, I think you're going to find some value. But sometimes, man, I just think people are drafting rookies just to draft rookies, and some of them are going to work out, Sam, but I hate to break it to everyone. Like, if you want to go ahead and look at the and I do this every year, I'll put it in the link actually, but look at the experience of just when we see fantasy players put up their numbers. Like, it's not good at rookies. We have, let's see, 3% of top 12 fantasy producers over the last 10 years, rookie quarterbacks, 11% running back, 4% wide receiver, 3% tight ends. These are really small, man. Guess who the better fantasy players are going to be? The guys who have just been grinding this entire time on their incumbent teams, getting more familiar with their current situation, another entire season of professional, weightlifting and all that stuff going into it. So again, we spend all this time, like, how many podcasts have we had now at this point just about this specific rookie class? I'm excited. You're excited. We should all be excited, but just remember, I think these second-year plus players going to end up being more of the stars.
So true. Temper expectations. And kind of on a note to that, one of the biggest themes we've seen in our community Discord over the last few weeks is, guys talking about trading for picks or trading away picks, because we're getting to the point in Dynasty land where we're at peak pick value right now. Like, we're getting close because the picks right now could still be anybody. They don't have names attached to them yet, so we're still kind of in that fun Twilight Zone era. And hopefully you guys have seen the graphic out there. I've seen it circulating the Twitterverse over the years. It's like a circle diagram of like a calendar year of when picks and players have the most value, which I think is, super insightful, because if you're like, a competing Dynasty team, you're trading away picks for vets like mid-season before your trade deadline or something like that. And then it kind of comes full circle to right about now when picks are at their peak value and current established players are, kind of depressed a little bit because we all have the rookie hype. And players are, managers are asking me like, hey, should I trade for this pick? Like, giving up this player. I'm like, well, would you be happy if that pick turned into the player you're giving away? And they kind of stop and they're like, but that pick could be anything. And it just makes me think,
Family Guy
it's
meme.
the Family Guy meme every year. It is. But the box could be anything, right? Like, you just never know. I've even seen guys, talking about like the Devontae Smiths, Brandon Ayuk's, Nico Collins, great young wide receivers. And they're like, yeah, but what if Brian Thomas turns into them? I'm like, but you already have it. So why run the risk? So not that I want to reach through Discord and be like, smack people upside the head here a little bit, but it's like, guys, come on. I want to chase rookie fever so bad. I get it. It's a lot of fun. It's fun to feel invested and get excited. But when you're trading away guys that you would be beyond thrilled if the guy you're drafting turned into part of that, what are you doing?
Dude, and another thing, like, again, I'm trying to grind all these guys. You're looking at, we got Dwayne with his rookie supermodel and everything. Like, it's good to have more information about these players, but let's not confuse spending an extra hour or two in March as like we suddenly know more than what these NFL teams are putting into this. All right. Not saying every decision maker at the NFL level is hitting 100%, in their own rights, batting 1,000. You're getting my freaking metaphors mixed up here. But just, good friend of mine, not going to throw him under the bus here. I've been wrong plenty of times, but we were in a Dynasty draft a couple years ago, and he was just telling me, man, we cannot take Jalen Waddle, Rondale Moore, Terrence Marshall. Like, we got to take one of those guys. I was like, no. And I was like, even if you think that, man, we're talking about the freaking 6th overall pick or whatever Waddle was versus like some day 2 guys. I was like, so no. And, we went with Waddle here. So
smart.
I've been wrong plenty of times. But look, your own perception of these guys, your model, my God, can we just call it an Excel spreadsheet? But it's okay as a tiebreaker.
I love this so much.
Listen to any of these guys, Dwayne, Matt Harmon, JJ, all the smartest dudes, and they're legit models. I kid. But guess what the number one correlator for any of those models is?
Draft capital.
It's draft capital. Exactly. Day one, and you can use the Dwayne supermodel is awesome because it takes the more Jimmy Johnson effect. An early first round pick is worth much more than the mid first round pick. So there are ways we can see that data and stuff, but again, I want to be, it's a lot more fun, Sam, to pick the consensus wide receiver 8 and be right on him. But let's just not get too carried away sometimes and remember that these NFL teams have quite a few more zeros attached to their decisions than we do.
It's crazy, just on principle alone, right? If you're going to take a top 10 wide receiver over like a top, a guy who's a day 2 pick, I just cannot fathom. Like you said too, we do what we can, right? I'm super fortunate to be surrounded by a whole bunch of smart people in fantasy life, and you guys do incredible work and make me look super smart in Discord when I can just drop in articles and stats and research, and they're like, wow, Sam, this is great. I'm like, I'm just the messenger, right? Like, I'm just the pipeline. I'm the conduit of all this amazing content to all of you wonderful people. But we're not in the NFL organization, right? Like, we don't make those big money decisions that careers can be on the line if those picks go wrong. And not that anyone's ever going to be 100% accurate, but I am glad that whoever it was that you talked out of that pick, I'm glad you guys picked Waddle, who I think set the rookie reception record.
Oh yeah, he's been crushing it. Now, honestly, him, Devonta, and T. Higgins, I think all 3 of them are priced pretty nice. This time last year, these dudes were all going like top 12, and then didn't work out. pretty much all of them end up being banged up a little bit. Devonta, not so much. Just Eagles offense kind of fell apart. But now they're all being priced more as borderline like wide receiver twos, man. I just grabbed T. Higgins here in this draft, like wide receiver 27 or something like that.
I love that.
He's come back to Cincy, apparently. So, yeah, man, sometimes again, we just, if we just, again, I'm talking like Dynasty, players have this mindset more often where we aren't just looking back at 1 year. We're in a good 3-year time span. I think that's the sweet spot, man. Like this 3-year kind of forward and even backward thinking kind of mindset when we're evaluating anybody. To your previous point, we don't want to go 10 years. Like that can get a little bit crazy here with what we're trying to do, and can't be that smart in the future. But madness, Sam, madness.
Here's a roster construction question for you, or another rookie draft question from one of our group members in the chat here. He says, okay, so I have the 102 in a Superflex rookie draft. He's got Anthony Richardson as his quarterback 1, and then a bunch of scrubs for quarterback 2. At wide receiver, he's not totally stacked, but he does say he has the Sun God and Nico Collins as his top 2, with Godwin as a wide receiver 3, so I'd argue he's sitting pretty good there. Does he take a quarterback at 2 or go Marvin Harrison Jr., assuming Caleb Williams goes 101? So what would you do there if Richardson is your quarterback 1, scrubs at quarterback 2, pretty set at wide receiver, but do you pass up Marvin Harrison? And if you go quarterback, which one?
I would lean Jaden Daniels over Drake Maye just because we're playing fantasy football.
Okay.
And he could be an 800-yard rusher type of guy.
Sure.
Again, Drake Maye has a nice boost over McCarthy, but I don't see Drake being this more than the 400, 500 rushing yard type of guy. And, again, Jaden's about to be the number 2 overall pick seemingly. So I would lean Jaden over Drake Maye. I don't hate going Marv, but man, I've been in these super flex leagues where you don't have a legit QB2. I have one dynasty where I still have like Russell Wilson and Ryan Tannehill as my guys. Like it's a miserable feeling, Sam. I need to do something about that when we're done here because it hurts to even say out loud right now. So, man, it's so difficult in super flex to compete without multiple good QBs. And I love Anthony Richardson. I think he's going to be breaking out. I don't want to call guys injury prone. That said, let's face it, I don't think Anthony Richardson is exactly playing the position to, be a guy we can absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, expect 17 games from. So I think you have to go quarterback, but you are in a position where I think enough people are enamored with Marvin Harrison Jr., deservedly so, thinking that he is just the absolute next big thing, next Julio Jones level, a player. Not a great comp for him. I like AJ Green or Larry Fitzmore, but that sort of producer. So, man, if there was a time you could trade down to 103 or 104 and really stack a couple, because as much as I do prefer Jaden Daniels, if you can just get him or Drake Maye, I think that's fine. Like, again, I think Maye could very much be better than Daniels, 4 or 5 years down the line. Right now, though, and even for these next couple years, I do lean Daniels. So I would look to trade down, even if it's just a spot or two, let whoever else go up. And if you can ensure that they're going to take a wide receiver, then you're just that much better off.
Yeah, you took my follow-up right out of my mouth, and it was perfect. I was going to say trade down within tiers, and that's something that I'm always advocating for a ton when people ask dynasty related questions of, well, do you like 3 or 4 guys in this range? Do you like a lot more? Or are you at the end of your tier? You should probably sit tight. If trading back works, great. A lot of it is, how much time do you have on the clock? Is it going to be a fast rookie draft where you get 60 seconds, or is it more of a slow draft where you can take your time with it and finagle some moves? And I think that's fine as well. So like you said, if you're sitting in a spot where you think Daniels and Maye are, I don't want to say a wash, but kind of in that tier where you're not going to be super upset either way, and you're fine trading back, you want to trade back a couple spots if you know someone's going to take a wide receiver, if someone is super enamored with Bowers and it's a tight end premium league, whatever the case might be. So know your league mates, be willing to make some moves to slide back a spot or two and pick up another player elsewhere. So on that note of Daniels, one more time here, what do you think of his landing spot in Washington? So we know that the New England landing spot is not great, just objectively bad. We like McCarthy in Minnesota potentially if that's where he does end up. What about Daniels with the Commanders? Seems like decent weapons on paper. How do you think he fits with that offense?
Terry McLaurin. Now, I think officially this generation's, Andre Johnson, Allen Robinson, not even saying his peak is as good as those guys, but just his list of quarterbacks he's been forced to catch passes from is
Yep.
miserable. And, it's always been between Terry and DJ Moore. But hey, Justin Fields, say what you want about the guy. He did free DJ Moore better than anyone else that we have seen get it done. So, Terry, dog, I still think Jahan Dotson, although last year was very disappointing, and I haven't had a full chance to dive back into what exactly went wrong there. If he's still like your number 3 wide receiver, hopefully they draft another one of these ballers on day 2.
Right.
I think he could be worse off. Zach Ertz's corpse getting $5 million in the year 2024 is wild to me. That said, Cliff Kingsbury,
he's gonna get fed. That's the thing. Like for the 10 games he's out there, he's gonna get peppered with targets.
he fed him, and that's another one, dude. When I have been getting Daniels, like you can get Ertz for free, so it's gonna be gross, but it's gonna be like 9 targets, 7 catches, 45 yards, and the TUD adds up in a full PPR, obviously.
Yep.
So no, I think it could be a worse landing spot, man. And again, as much as Kingsbury has been called like this fake sharp and all that, and I'm not even saying I don't think he's on McVay or Shanahan's level or anything, but hey, we did see him with Kyler Murray produce some big time fantasy years. Like Kyler is still one of only 4 quarterbacks in NFL history averaging 20 plus fantasy points per game. So how much of that credit do you really want to give Cliff? Okay, I hear you. But at the end of the day, what that at least tells me is that Kyler's had the volume afforded to him to, let his God-given talents take over. And I do think that's what we'll see with Daniels in terms of running the football and getting a chance to be in a pass-happy attack. So I think it's good, Sam. Like, no, we don't have the dome. We don't have Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison out there. I wouldn't put it up there in Minnesota. But relative to a lot of teams we see picking in the top 2, man, it could be a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did they add Austin Eckler this year too, and they run it back with Brian Robinson? So they have some good pieces at pretty much every level of the offense. And I have heard a bit about the Cliff Kingsbury narrative of, he's worked with mobile quarterbacks in the past. So does that translate? I guess we'll see. It's fun to talk us kind of into that. Another quick question came in here, kind of takes a step beyond what we've talked about thus far. We'll come back to some of these quarterbacks, but wanted to get this answered here. He goes, any non-top 6 quarterbacks that you like, assuming decent landing spot, somebody like Rattler or anybody else? Is there anyone that could go later to a decent spot that you would at least cautiously be interested in outside these top guys?
I haven't studied the non-top 6 as much as I need to. The one thing with Rattler is just, again, it's not saying we haven't seen, look what CJ Stroud did last year, okay?
Right.
He can move, but he's not, racking up fantasy points with his legs. But that's how good you have to be in order to make a serious splash into the top 10. Otherwise, we have guys like Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff who are really good, incredible real life quarterbacks. They still give us some good fantasy upside, but the floor is just so much more mediocre. So from that standpoint, I don't know that we're having anyone else out there that's going to, again, fit that more fantasy friendly mold out there. But it's hard not to watch Rattler and be pretty intrigued by what the guy can do. And, when we do dig into these guys, and I think the whole idea behind watching film and trying to learn more about these guys' backstories is trying to paint a reasonable narrative for why things could get better. And in Rattler's case, I don't know if you guys ever watched the QB1 doc series on Netflix, back when he was on it, but a little bit of a dickhead in high school. But you know what? Who amongst us wasn't a bit of a dickhead back in high school?
At some
certain
point,
points
right?
and times. And dude, 5-star quarterback being lauded as the next big thing out there. I don't know. I'd probably be a little bit full of myself at that point in time as well. So, he goes from that to Oklahoma. Okay, why did it not work out at Oklahoma? He gets beat up by Caleb freaking Williams. Okay,
right.
I think we can wrap our minds around that. Goes to South Carolina, gets named, I believe, a back-to-back team captain. Actually got, again, I'm not the one talking these sources, but I do trust guys like Dane Brugler, Daniel Jeremiah, and all of them. And when they're saying that, he has actually matured and improved off the field, that seems like it was the only thing really holding him back. Because, my God, you see some of the throws this dude makes, absolute howitzer for his arm. Maybe not Joe Milton level, but, we are talking about a guy that can put that football pretty much anywhere when he really wants to. And accordingly, I do think the big time throws stats from PFF, awesome because it's quantifying what we're seeing. It's a big time throw. You know it when you see it. But Patrick Mahomes just did Patrick Mahomes things with an ADOT under 7 yards. I'm not so sure it's the most translatable, predictable stat that we want to be following for the NFL level. But when you have that sort of arm strength, man, at a minimum, he's going to force defenses to respect that vertical passing game from day one. Whether he's going to be able to turn that into something really usable remains to be seen. In my heart of hearts, I think he ends up a bit more of a Drew Lock style prospect. But Sam, I love Drew Lock, so I'm looking forward to Spencer Rattler doing his thing. Preseason all-star. Whether or not he can become an actual, viable NFL star down the line, probably not. But hey, should be a fun ride regardless.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think to the question in the chat here about any, non-top six quarterbacks that could get some decent landing spots. We talked about the Rams a little bit, maybe backing up Stafford with McVay and how that offense usually tends to be pretty fantasy friendly. Purdy, I think in a good way, Brock Purdy ruined the quarterback position, but in a good way, right? Because I think we saw a huge spike in teams drafting quarterbacks the following year, trying to find like their next super cheap Mr. Irrelevant who they could build a team around. But after the rash of injuries we saw at quarterback last year with something like 50 quarterbacks getting a start or at least seeing the field, teams recognized it's important to have depth there. And I usually have like a weekly dig at Easton Stick, but like somebody like that should never be starting on an NFL football field or playing NFL football. I don't know the man. I'm sure he's great. Only talking about his on the field prowess or lack thereof. But so to see teams maybe prioritize, hey, we got an aging quarterback. We got a guy who maybe hasn't been super healthy, might be on the way out or on the back half of his career. Somebody like Stafford, who, being the Iron Man that he's been over the course of his career, his body won't last forever. So I'm curious where some of these other guys go that aren't going to get the day one or the week one start, but could be pressed into service and could make a name for themselves a little bit later on.
Titans could be a low key day two spot. Like, I enjoyed the Will Levis experience. He's got a little bit of that similar, like, hey, could be 3 touchdowns, could be 3 picks. It's going to be a fun time.
You just never know, right?
Like, kind of plays like that. Teammates seem to rally behind him. Like, a lot of people seem to be like shitting on the Titans strategy. They should know by the end of this year whether or not Levis is their guy or not. And I applaud them for at least getting that far, man. The worst thing you can do with one of these rookie quarterbacks is waste an entire freaking season not knowing if they have it because you haven't surrounded them with ample weapons. So, hey, maybe Will Levis is it. Maybe he isn't. If he's not, man, we got DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Chikakonkwo, Taja, Tony Pollard out there. Yeah. Maybe not, a top 5 offensive environment in the league, but we at least have some places to go with the football. God forbid Treylon Burks actually ends up giving us anything here. So just, again, not saying – I think Will Levis deserves to be the week 1 starter and stuff, but let's add something in that day 2 range and see what happens. Michael Pratt from Tulane, best mascot for my money's worth as well, Sam, is that angry green wave. Like, I don't know what he's so mad about.
Perfect.
Man,
I'm with you.
I want to get behind him, whatever he's mad about, let me know because I support it.
I was going to say, too, I wanted to get your thoughts, and you touched on it. I've really appreciated how teams, specifically the Titans and the Bears, have gone out of their way to surround either, Caleb Williams and now Will Levis with guys that you will know soon, right? We're not going to do this, weird rebuild, make them earn it nonsense. Like, give them the reps, give them the tools to succeed, and that way, if you know that he's the guy, great. Like, you've got it now. And if he's not, thanks, sorry, thanks for your time. We're going to move on and go in a different direction, but we're not going to waste another 2 to 3 years as a franchise. And with that, I do appreciate teams being definitive with their actions, but how do you balance that as a franchise of like, guys sometimes need time to develop versus we're going to know soon, right? Like if you're the guy or not, and what if it's not, and what if you cut him too early? So it's a tough spot to be in. I'm glad I'm not making those decisions. I'm glad I can just be mad about it from the sidelines when it doesn't go in my way, but it's a tough dynamic for teams to manage, I think, sometimes.
Dude, and that's like freaking legit NFL not for long. I mean, how can you really make any move as a coach or GM that's not going to pay dividends within the first year and a half? I mean, You don't see the leashes be very long these days at all. I don't think they really ever have been. So, yeah, man, it's tough. And, for a little bit, I back when I was leaving college especially, wasn't sure what I wanted to do in the world yet. Like, I remember wanting to try to, work my way into one of these analytical departments in the NFL. And who knows if I actually could have, had a legit chance to get in there or not. But one thing that did stick out to me was like, man, think about just all that time moving your family to some new, city and town, and you could do great work, but your front office just drafts the wrong player. Things don't work out. Owner gets tired of it, and just like that,
cleans out.
So hardly only applies to analytics departments, NFL coaches as a whole, scouts, all that. It is not an easy job, man. My goodness.
No kidding. I wanted to get your thoughts quickly on what do you think the Broncos do? Because they seem to be a bit of an enigma team. Do they go with like a Bo Nix at 12, I think? Do they trade out? Do they pick a different position there? I know you said you will not stand to be in a world, or to stand for what Jarrett frickin' Stidham starting week 1, but is it Nix? Is it not him? If it is him, how does he fit? What are your thoughts on just the team environment for Denver?
Seems like Bo Nix, and just based on, shout out Joel Klatt. He was the first one I kind of saw term just the point guard kind of style that Nix plays with. We're getting the ball out real fast. Had, I think, the fourth lowest average target depth of 140 plus FBS quarterbacks last season. Like, you see him be that distributor, not necessarily, turning this into a hero ball sort of show, which is hilarious to say now because, again, you'll see some of these Auburn highlights of the way he used to play and couldn't
Right.
be more night and day. So I do think the Bo Nix thing makes sense. I do wonder if Sean Payton has his, because you look at this Broncos roster, not horrendous. They actually, ripped off a nice little win streak there during the, middle part of last season, but also wouldn't exactly confuse them as a, ready to go contender or anything like that. So just all in on a Dak Prescott for 2025 if he happens to hit free agency. Like, I have a hard time believing Sean Payton came out of retirement just to, go to the prom with Bo freaking Nix out here. With all due respect to Bo Nix, like, he's one of those guys where I just don't think his necessarily highest, outcome is more than just like a mid-level NFL starter. And, a lot of people just want to make that your basis. If you can't be this game-changing Josh Allen level quarterback, even in your, 99th percentile outcome, why are we drafting you in the first place? So I do wonder if, again, there could be some sort of trades opening up. What about Geno Smith, Sam? You think he's going to end the season or start the season in Seattle?
He's turning into, I think, one of these, guys who obviously resurrected his career and got a nice payday, but is going to turn into, like, I think, kind of our next generation. Man, no, I can't even think of the guy's name. Who's been like the great backup who's just been kind of floating around? Who is it?
Fitzmagic?
No, not Fitzmagic. Like a Jacoby Brissett type player, somebody like that.
That's a good one.
Who if you need him, you can take him. He's going to come in, do the work, grind out some wins. At least keep your team at at water level. He's not going to sink your team. That's just kind of how I see him. So I think he can continue to play well. I don't think he's ever going to be the quarterback that's going to take your team all the way. I think he'll be like a nice, a bridge quarterback. He'll get work somewhere. He's a guy that I think is always going to find himself on a roster, but I don't think he's going to be anything more than that, unfortunately.
Oh, just look, I hear you, but when it's him versus Jarrett Stidham or potentially Bo Nix at this point, give me Geno. But it's just interesting to me because, when you look across the rosters in the NFL, it's like, okay, what backup quarterbacks could still potentially get traded? And like, Ryan Tannehill's still a free agent. That's moving the needle even less than Geno, to begin with. So I go back to when initially we saw the Seahawks go ahead and pick up that, if they let him stay on the roster past February 14th, it triggered his 12.7 million. And Schefter's tweet, I have it pulled up right now. He goes, now Geno Smith will represent a value to them, or any other team that decides to reach out to see if it can acquire Smith via trade. I don't know about you, Sam. I love Adam Schefter, but I think sometimes that wording is, pretty important and potentially based on what, a certain someone is telling him behind the scenes.
Or any other team.
That. Yeah, dude. And then look what happened. They traded Sam Howell. You're like, it was like a Friday. We're all trying to enjoy our Februarys and stuff. But they trade for Sam Howell, and he goes, it's going to be a competition here. So I think Geno's better than Sam Howell, so it could be a moot point. But, man, if Geno could go to the Raiders, bro, Raiders or Broncos at this point, take that fantasy stock for every single pass catcher, man. Boost that shit.
Go to the AFC West and succeed. So to the Sean Payton point for a second, I think you bring up a good point that it's another variable because we don't have enough that fantasy managers need to consider. Coaching, how coaches operate. Sean Payton came back to coaching, and like you said, is he going to do that to sit through a rebuild? Is he going to do that to sit through developing a quarterback? How long does he want to do it? Maybe he's in it for the long haul again. I don't know. But I think he wants to compete, right? And if he's going to want to do that now, he's in a division with Justin Herbert. He's obviously in a division with Patrick Mahomes. So you have 4 games a year against top-end quarterback talent. Like you said, Jarrett Stidham, Geno Smith, go get Dak Prescott next year. I don't know, but I think you bring up some really good points about how coaches view the team environment and what influence they have on, yes, I'm here for the long haul, I'm fine rebuilding and growing and developing, or no, I want to get at least somebody of a starting caliber option in the backfield.
Can you name the only other quarterback in the Broncos roster other than Jarrett Stidham?
No. Can you give me his initials?
BD. He had a brief stint with the Cowboys. Hilarious.
Oh, Ben DiNucci.
Yeah.
Let's go.
that tweet he has, I think it's still like pinned to his Twitter. Is like, if the people want some more Ben DiNucci, I can give
Yeah.
them some more
Oh my
Ben DiNucci.
gosh.
That spot start against the Eagles, where it's just like a sidearm fling, just nowhere accurate near its intended target. But yeah, man, I don't think Jared Stidham and Ben DiNucci are the answers. So
That cannot be
maybe
your
it's.
quarterback room. That can't be. That's malpractice if that's your quarterback room.
And again, it seems like Bo Nix and McCarthy are the ones that are getting linked to Denver the most. And I'm not saying they couldn't work out or anything there. But man, for a team that's already going to be in cap hell these next 2 years because of Russ, like it's not exactly what I think Peyton wanted to come back for. I am very confused why he didn't just chill on Colin Cowherd's couch for another year and then like look long and hard at replacing McCarthy in Dallas. But I am not a doctor, so.
Yeah, no kidding, no kidding. Here's another fun one for you. What are your thoughts on, it seems like every year, every offseason, we get to this point where we've talked these prospects to death, and now suddenly the reports come out of like character concerns and questions about, is this guy really going to be suitable? Is he a good locker room guy? Is he going to be a good teammate? Like, it's got to be noise, right? Like, you can't actually take those things into consideration when there's no like verifiable proof to these things. Is it just smoke? Is it just us getting bored because the off season's too long? Like, it seems like it happens more often than it should, and a lot of these things don't really seem to hold a lot of weight when it's all said and done.
Good to be aware of the stuff that we know about and
Sure.
is verified. Like, okay, for example, couple weeks ago, not weeks ago, but you just see people going, "Oh, where's the hype in this Jermaine Burton guy? He balls out of Georgia, balls out of Alabama. Like, what's the problem here?" And it's like, yeah, do you see him punch that Tennessee fan after the game? So,
Right.
like, there are reasons why certain players are going to be lower. Tyreek Hill was not a fifth-round pick for zero reason.
For no reason, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So from that standpoint, if you're trying to get your mock drafts right, like, yeah, I think it's important out here. And yeah, hey, you're trying to just enjoy fantasy football. You don't want bad characters in your team, man. It is a free country.
Yep.
You do you with that. But in general, man, I don't think we have enough information about it. Like, I go back to sometimes, remember the whole Des Bryant Walmart tape thing that was going around?
Yeah.
Yeah, and nothing happens of it. So that's the problem here. As much as sometimes the smoke does in fact become a fire, I just think that with the nature of these things, like, we hear about and remember the bad instances so much more often, the times that I think overwhelmingly it turns into a lot of nothing. So be aware of it. I know Malik Neighbors recently was the one getting some reports about it. And just, I guess my biggest thing, guys, as I actually draft Jermaine Burton in round 17,
Let's
that's
go.
a value, Sam, and I
Let's
am
go.
okay with that on my best ball squad. But with the Malik Neighbors thing, like, first of all, please, for the love of God, look at the source. And I'm not even going to give them their shine, but these aggregator accounts that are becoming the bane of our freaking existence, like, make sure they're actually taking a good source and not some shenanigans. Like, we just had the entire Brandon Ayuk trade stuff go down. Like, bad
Right,
sources
exactly.
are going to exist. Just don't take the first tweet at full face value. Hopefully they include the @ for whoever said it. Look at them and see what's going on there. But at least as far as we know with Malik Neighbors, and all we can know is he got arrested on Bourbon Street on, I think, last February for carrying an illegal firearm, didn't have, a warrant for his gun and all that. Charges got dismissed.
Yep.
I don't know, man. Like, to me, sure sounds like he's still going to be a top 6 overall pick. So if an NFL team is good enough to use their, top 6 pick on him, I'm not going to exactly hold that against him. So, hey, all these things are pieces to the puzzle. And the more we can try to complete that puzzle and build the perfect picture, I am for it. But especially in our position, man, it's so tough to, know when we can't talk to these guys. And, the stuff we hear, who knows if that's actually what's happening or if it's just what their agents want to have put out there. Because sadly, in our day and age, I mean, even the national reporters, man, like, how many stories are these guys, like, I was trying to think about this the other day. I was like, what story has come out in the last 2 or 3 years in the NFL that teams or players like really didn't want to get out? And like, the first thing that came to my head was like the Sean McDermott 9/11 stuff going on.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the Bills didn't want that one to get out.
Yeah.
So like, all right, cool. Thanks, national reporters, for, I guess, giving us that. But I just think everything they're telling us is usually, already being said from a team account, or it's just like this weird thing where, I'm like, it's just during the season, Sam, it's like, oh yeah, Malik Neighbors limited on Wednesday with a hamstring injury. And it's just beat reporter, national reporter, not adding a single damn piece of context to it other than just repeating it. So Yeah, man. Long story short, grain of salt more times than not with these off the field concerns.
Man, it's so true that you're speaking my language here. I mean, kind of as a side note, I teach high school students, so I'm constantly on them of like, where are you getting your information from? It's better to be accurate than it is to be first. But it's like, but I saw this on TikTok. I'm like, yeah, but from where? And so, you got to be so careful out in Twitter/X, whatever the kids call it nowadays, because people want to be first. They want to have the hot take. They want to be the first to break the news. And it can, almost cause more damage being wrong early. Like it does. Like it's okay. Just let us have the information, consume good information, follow Fantasy Life. We provide good information. But you just got to know your stuff, right? And I don't know. Like you said, you hit on all the points. I have nothing else to add to that point. Wasn't it a couple years ago when Jamar Chase was coming in as a rookie, like he couldn't catch an NFL ball because it didn't have like
the stripes.
It didn't have the white college stripe on it. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? Like
he dropped like 2 rounds in ADP because some preseason drops.
And wasn't like, KJ Osborne running ahead of Justin Jefferson with the ones when he first got to Minnesota. Or no, it was BC Johnson. That's who it was. It was BC Johnson is running ahead of Justin Jefferson, which just sounds blasphemous today. Like those two names aren't even in the same stratosphere.
Well, then what's funny is we'll get this other stuff like Quentin Johnston last June was like randomly comes out and he's like, one of my goals as a rookie was, get that starting spot. So just feels really good like to check that off, insinuating that he had beat out Josh Palmer. And then like he just didn't. I don't know what the hell he was talking about. Yeah. He hadn't beat him out. He never really beat him out. It didn't happen. So, at the end of the day, I think, men lie, women lie, but the film, Sam, does not.
Ball don't lie. Film don't lie either. That's true.
And again, that's our whole world of, it's become this analytics versus film thing. Like the numbers should say, quantify what we can see. I love it. That's one of my funnest things to do is to add statistical context to exactly what we're seeing with our eyes out there. But man, if you're really worried about a prospect or, what you're thinking about them, pull them up, watch a couple plays. Someone asked Nate Tice the other day, they're like, how come you haven't changed your Drake Maye ranking throughout these last few months? He's like, there's no games have been played, So yeah, I understand we all can't watch every single player, every single play, before February happens or anything like that. But really, man, throughout these months, like the amount, you said it yourself, man. McCarthy has moved up 30 freaking plus spots. And this is what annoys me about mock drafts because people aren't even doing mock drafts like out of their own intelligence, out of who they think should go where or anything. They're just like literally blindly reading other mock drafts and trying to put together
just
who
plugging in names, right?
The most right and stuff. It's fan fiction pretty much for men, which hey, to each their own. I like reading mock drafts too from time to time, but it just kills me how we have these, version 12 of my mock draft when, again, not a single new snap of football has been played.
You don't always have to update stuff, right? Like you said, you don't always have to update stuff. Dynasty ranks don't have to change every week. Your rookie rankings don't have to change just because you got bored and wanted to go revisit it. Unless you have new information to add to your model/spreadsheet, then it's fine to sit with your ranking. I'm with you. So, Ian, we're getting close to that time. We've covered quarterbacks pretty extensively. I'm excited for this incoming class. Is there anything else you would like to leave the people with this evening on, any useful nuggets they can take away for looking at these quarterbacks? Anything you want to leave the people with from your fount of knowledge?
We did cover them. You're a freaking good host, Sam. I appreciate you. I was like, wait, no, we had to have left someone out there. We didn't talk a ton of Caleb, but that's because everyone's been talking Caleb for freaking ever. He's going 101. Are you, Sam, longtime Milwaukee Packers guy? What's your level of concern level about the Bears? Because I'm sure it's always been between a 0 and a 1. Like, they got some talent, though. They're bringing in Caleb.
Yep.
You starting to get a little worried up there in first place land?
A little bit. I mean, I've become much more, I think, appreciative of the game and less about, of course, do I want to beat the Bears twice a year all the time? Absolutely. Do I love that the Bears are building, I think, a really good competitive roster on Caleb Williams? Yeah, that's great. I think that's awesome. So, again, I've loved seeing what Detroit's done over the last couple of years to go from just, it was 2 wins every year, check a box, move on, to, Detroit's great for football. It's so fun to have them be competitive. It's, again, don't love it as a Packer fan, and now these games are suddenly a lot more competitive, but objectively speaking, I'm excited. It's nice to see that the Lions got a great roster, great coaching staff put together. The Bears are hopefully going to get their quarterback of the future. Who knows? Maybe the Vikings get their quarterback of the future in McCarthy. It's a fun time. It's a fun time for sure. I'm loving what I've seen out of Jordan Love, but yeah, it's good times in the NFC North. I'm excited.
Football is just more fun when there's good quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
That's the thing, man. So yeah, that might be, might take down your favorite team a little more often than you prefer. But no, man, like nothing's worse than when we get these just, backup quarterback versus backup quarterback week 14 games. Like, my God, every now and then they turn into 63-14 Raiders over the Chargers. But usually we're not that lucky, Sam.
So thanks for jumping out with me tonight, Ian. It's been a great, great time. So what are we up? Thursday this week, 8 o'clock Central PM. 6 p.m. Pacific. We're back with running backs, I believe. Not quite as excited to talk about as the quarterback class, but we're going to save, I think, some good wide receiver, tight end talk for next week. So thanks again. We will see you Thursday.
We'll be back, man. Dwayne's RB Supermodel is live. Also talking to Eric Froton on Wednesday, Roto World's finest. But yeah, great day. Be great. Appreciate all you guys.